I have a very special guest here in Carolinenhof, Thomas Greco from Tucson, Arizona, and he is the author of this book, The End of Money and the Future of Civilization. And we're having a meeting tonight to bring some people together who think about these issues, and I want to ask Tom some introductory questions. So to describe what is the most important message that he wants to bring out with his work in general.
Well, the most important message, Franz, is that we need to reinvent money and banking. I think it's become very clear within the last 2 or 3 years that our monetary and banking system is really dysfunctional. In the fall of 2008, we saw a near collapse of the global banking system with the bankruptcies of a couple of the major financial institutions in the United States. And there was basically a panic that occurred in the halls of government and banking to try to prevent the collapse. And so what happened was the famous government bailout of the financial institutions that prevented a total collapse. What happened there was that the government actually bought up a lot of the bad debts that these banks had put into the economy. And so the government took on a lot of private debt that was unpayable. And in that way they saved the banking industry from suffering the consequences of their malfeasance. A lot of people argue that the banks should have been allowed to collapse and fail, and the stockholders and the managers of those banks should have borne the consequences for the bubble that they created. And I would tend to agree with that. But it's a matter of the bankers really controlling the political situation, and it's been that way for a long time. So the message that I'm trying to get across is that we need to reinvent money and banking, and we can do that because, as I say, money today is nothing more than credit. It's created when banks make loans. And when a bank makes a loan, they expect to get interest on that loan, even though they haven't loaned anything. They've just decided that certain people are qualified to pay back a certain amount of money. And so they create money on the basis of loans that have some collateral or not. So when you go to the bank and you say, I would like to buy a house, and I need 100,000 euros to buy this house, the bank might say, okay, we will make the loan, and you will pay a certain amount every month, plus interest. So what they will do is they'll make 2 entries on their books. On the one side, they take your mortgage note, which you sign. This is your obligation. It's an asset on the books of the bank. And they create an offsetting liability, which would be a deposit to your account. So by making 2 bookkeeping entries, they've created money.
So to say, out of nothing.
Well, out of the value of the real estate that you are buying. So they have monetized the value of your collateral. Mm-hmm. That's all they've done. Because the economy is dominated by private corporations, and these are mega corporations, they get bigger and bigger all the time. Because the economy is dominated by corporations, and because labor is a cost to a corporation, they try to minimize labor costs. So they replace labor with machines. So the amount of product achieved per unit of labor has increased tremendously over the last many decades. So what does that mean? It means it takes less work, less people to produce what we need. This should be a good situation, should it not?
Yep.
But as long as we insist that livelihood be coupled to work, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's separate from the money problem, but
Yes.
it's very closely related to the money problem. Because as I said, this whole economic era for the last 300 years has been driven by compound interest.
Yes.
If we didn't have this debt imperative, we would not have a growth imperative. We could have the growth more steadily, and it would be better distributed. The product would be better distributed amongst the people. But you see, we've allowed a small elite to control an essential element in our lives, money.
Right.
So those who control money control everything. And they keep everybody in this wage slavery or debt bondage. You have these two things together.
Yes.
And they're both caused by the same thing.
Yeah. So I think you're arguing that we just need to do more than just think about a different money system. We think we have to think about a different civilization.
Well, it's a shift in power. Power needs to be devolved to the local community level.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to isolate ourselves in small communities and not have anything to do with each other, but we need to rebuild our society from the bottom up, and that means from the individual, the family, the community. We need to empower ourselves to do what needs to be done. And right now the power is held at the top. We have this pyramidal hierarchy with the political and financial elite controlling everything that goes on. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to get a better distribution of the productivity until we devolve power. And we're not going to be able to decouple livelihood from work until we devolve power.
Mm-hmm. So devolving power means also localizing currencies.
Yes. Well, it means localizing across the board. But the key to localization is reinventing money. In fact, I say the end of money. I'm serious about the end of money. Really, money is just an information system. You have debits and credits. That's all the banks do, really, besides authorizing what they call loans. They just keep track of debits and credits. If you have an employer, your employer makes a deposit maybe once a month to your account. That's your salary. And then you take your checkbook or your debit card and you go shopping. So when your employer pays you, they simply add numbers to your account. When you use your debit card, they take numbers off your account. So they're just doing this process of credit clearing. They're keeping a record of debits and credits. Well, we can do that ourselves. We don't need banks to do that for us. And we don't need to use euros or dollars or yen or any other political money. All we need is a way of measuring value.